Hello, today I'm doing a recipe that was requested from me. The little feller said, Granny B, could you do a recipe on dressing? He said, I so hope that I don't just get served stovetop this Thanksgiving. So we had company the other night, and I was telling her that the next one I was going to do was a request to do dressing, and she said, have you ever done the crock pot dressing? And I said, no, I never have. And she said, well, my mother used to do the crock pot dressing all the time, and she said it was delicious. So I didn't have a recipe for it, but of course I'm living in my mother's house now that my mother is gone, and we take care of my dad. And I looked through her recipes, and I found one that she had cut out of the newspaper, and it is called crock pot dressing. So I'm just going to read it to you, and then I'm going to give you some Granny B suggestions, because I would do it different. It's an 8-inch pan of cornbread, 8 slices of day-old bread, 4 eggs, 1 medium onion chopped, 1 cup of chopped celery, 1 tablespoon of sugar, a ½ teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, 2 cans of cream of chicken soup, and 2 cans of chicken broth, 2 tablespoons of margarine, and you combine it all up and then just put it in the crock pot. You cook it on high for 2 hours and then on low for 3 or 4 hours. It says an 8-inch pan of cornbread. And I'm also going to show you how to do regular cornbread. So I just went ahead and fixed up a double batch of cornbread. And pay no attention to those 2 empty pieces there, because who can resist hot cornbread when it comes out of the oven? And my husband and I ate some of that while it was hot, and we put butter on it, and oh my goodness, it's good. But so we're going to start with an 8-inch pan of cornbread, and so that would be about this much. And I'm going to save the rest of it for my dressing that I've done for years. Look at that nice, beautiful brown crust. But we're going to get, that's about an 8-inch square cornbread. So we're going to just crumble it up in here. The next thing it calls for is the 8 slices of day-old bread. Now, when I make bread pudding, the recipe I had for bread pudding just called for day-old bread too. But in doing my own, I realized that toasted bread in bread pudding is so much better than just day-old. So I took the 8 pieces of bread, but I toasted them. So we're going to crumble those up. And so the next item is 4 eggs. Don't put your eggs in till the last, because if you put everything else in and then taste it, you can taste it as long as the eggs aren't in there, but don't taste raw eggs. The next thing is 1 medium onion. Okay, this is 1 medium onion. It came to about a cup, and it calls for 1 cup of chopped celery. So here's the celery. It says just dump them in your crock pot. If you saute these onions and celery, that enhances their flavor. Okay, so we're going to saute this in about a tablespoon of butter. Now, since I'm also doing my own recipe, it also calls for onions and celery, so you don't mind. I know my YouTube friends won't mind if I put my other recipe of celery and onions in here and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We're going to go away from the camera while this is sauteing. We'll see you in about 10 minutes. Oh, while you were playing another game of free cell, I've been slaving away in this kitchen trying to get this dressing done. You feel sorry for me? I didn't think so. But here's the celery and onions, pretty much sweated down. So we're going to put that half of the onions and celery in here, And the other half is going to go in here where I'm going to make up my own homemade dressing. My little tip is I chunked up the cornbread and put it in a gallon Ziploc bag. Estimate how much cornbread that was. And so if this is a gallon, then a half a gallon is 2 quarts, so that's about 8 cups. And then the bread, I would say that's 5 cups. Now the next thing it calls for is 2 cans of chicken broth. I did this on purpose. Here's 1 can of chicken broth, and it is 14.5 ounces. So we're going to pour that in. 14.5 ounces. Now if I was caught short in my pantry and I didn't have another can, then I made the equal amount of water. 14.5 ounces of water. And I'm going to put 2 chicken bouillon cubes in there, which would be the equivalent of a can of chicken broth. Oh, this recipe calls for a half a tablespoon of sugar. I'm going to leave it out. You can add it. It calls for salt and pepper. And then it calls for 2 cans of cream of chicken soup. My honey got these. Low fat, low cholesterol. I guess it doesn't matter. Cream of chicken soup anyway. I hardly ever use this. I always do my own. But because we're doing it for my friend, we're going to use cream of chicken soup. Okay, this is getting nice and moistened. Remember, we haven't even put the eggs in yet because I wanted to taste of it. This doesn't call for any sage or any other seasonings, just the salt and pepper. And so I just want to see how it tastes. It reminds me of a funny story. The old TV program Roseanne had an episode where she and her husband were sitting on the sofa, and her sister was in the kitchen, and she popped her head out of the kitchen and she said, "Where do you keep your spices?" And Roseanne gave her a look like she just couldn't believe she was asking that. And she said, "In the salt shaker." My taste test turned out okay. We're going to go with this. We're going to add the 4 eggs now. So all I'm going to do is just plop it in there, and we're going to cook it on, it says cook on high 2 hours and then on low for 3 to 4 hours. And it also calls for some butter on top. Calls for 2 tablespoons, but we're going to eyeball it. So there we have the first steps in crock pot dressing. Now I've switched everything over, and we're going to continue with just my own homemade dressing. And then I'm going to put in our spices. This is 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of parsley, 1 teaspoon of sage, and just a sprinkling of lemon pepper and thyme. I've got almost 2 cups of a homemade chicken broth. So now we're going to add our eggs, put it in the pan, and put it in the oven at 350. It'll need to bake for about 30 minutes. Okay, the eggs are all mixed up in there. So I'm going to just put it in the pan now. Oh, I wanted you to see how moist it is. Can you see how moist that is? Smooth it out. Gotta have some butter on it too. We are good to go. Okay, we're back. My husband and I and my dad already dug into the dressing that I'm used to making. And here it is, what's left of it. We did a good job of trying to devour it all. But my husband and I are going to do a taste test and see if we can determine which is going to be our dressing from now on. So let's see what it looks like on the inside. Oh my. Oh, that looks wonderful. It hardly is fair for me to take mine now because ours is already cool. But we're going to put them side by side. And there's not that much difference in looking at them. I'm going to give my darling a bite of this. And I'm going to take a bite. Of course, I'll have to blow on it a little bit. Blow on it, honey. It smells wonderful. That is good. He's coming back for another bite of mine.
I like yours better.
Oh, he likes mine better. Smart husband. No, really, there's not a lot of difference between mine and the stove in the crock pot. So this would really, I'm going to judge it a toss-up. So I would suggest that if you like the convenience of using the crock pot, by all means, make the crock pot recipe. But if you like the idea of being able to be over and done with in less than an hour, do the standard. That makes me think of a time when my youngest daughter came to me one time and she said, "Mama, who's the prettiest, me or Lisa?" Well, now, Lisa was blonde and blue-eyed and real fair-skinned. And Linda looked a lot like me, a little darker, with dark curly hair and dark gray eyes. And so I said, well, before I answer that question, I said, you answer me one. And this was back in the 70s. And I said, which one is prettier, I Dream of Jeanie or Wonder Woman? And she thought a minute and she goes, well, I don't know. They're both pretty, but they're so different. And I said, well, that's the way I think about you. Lisa is my little I Dream of Jeanie girl, and you're my little Wonder Woman girl. And that made her happy, so I think this is I Dream of Jeanie dressing, and this is Wonder Woman dressing. Either way, I hope this will be a winner at your house, that the one who asked me to do a dressing will get something besides stovetop this year at Thanksgiving. Both of them are worthy. Thank you so much.